All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got a pretty incredible interview for you today. I think this gentleman is a bit of a pioneer in some ways. I mean, definitely has been trying to work on some cutting edge stuff. And I think what I like about him the most, we've kind of followed each other's journey in crypto. We've kind of taken two different journeys in some ways. He's been a bit of a founder slash spokesperson slash whatever you want to call it. He's really been a bit of an idea man behind this project we're going to be talking about, where I've primarily focused on content creation, but we both love cryptocurrency. We love the technology. We love what it can do. And he has sunk his teeth full on into a particular protocol project. If you've been following the channel for a while, you know exactly who he is. He's been here before. He's been active in our Telegram group. We have none other than Mr. AJ Brockman himself from EMP.money. And we'll go ahead and pull that up, and I'll let him go ahead and kind of get started and introduce himself. And here we're looking at the website, but we'll get to that in a moment. I've got some questions for AJ. Before we go any further, let me just say this, ladies and gentlemen, I promise I will always let you know if video content has been sponsored. And although EMP Money has sponsored content in the past, this video is absolutely not sponsored. AJ reached out, said he wanted to talk about some new developments and wanted to know if I would be up to it. And I said, hey, listen, let's just hop on camera, let's talk, and I'll record it and I'll upload it. It is what it is. I appreciate anyone who's trying to innovate in this space, and I appreciate having AJ on. So, AJ, for those who don't know you, could you just briefly introduce yourself, your background, and then maybe your initial reason for wanting to start EMP.money?
Yeah, well, absolutely, brother. It's an honor to be back, man. Again, in terms of crypto friends, I consider you a friend, but I mean, we go way back, brother. Again, I think what almost probably 8 years in the space,
Crazy.
and both of us are super passionate about crypto, and and we'll talk about this as we get going here. Like you mentioned, sometimes maybe I'm a little too transparent or out there, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about building and innovating and creating amazing opportunities for crypto as a whole. So yeah, man, I just want to say thank you for all that you do. I'm still an avid follower. Even with everything I have going on, I listen to literally every one of your videos, and I think you're one of the most genuine and objective, which again I really can appreciate. And I want you to be very objective with everything that we're talking about today. But that is a really unique angle that you bring to the space. So, all right. So, yeah, let me give a little bit of background. As well said, my name is AJ Brockman. I've had a lot of success both inside and outside of crypto. I'm also happen to be a paraplegic. I was born with a neuromuscular disease, but I've never let that hold me back, and I've made an amazing career both inside and outside of crypto. Back in 2012, I created a portrait for President Barack Obama. That really put my career in the real world, so to speak, on a great path, and have transitioned that into an art gallery, a craft beer bar, commercial real estate, you name it, man. I've done a lot. And so back when COVID hit, um, and even before then, I was always super passionate about crypto. Again, utilizing technology with my limitations was always something I did, and just fell in love with crypto. Went down that rabbit hole, and then 2.5 years ago, I decided to actually start or co-found a project, and that was EMP.money. Again, 2.5 years ago, the end of the last bull cycle, and it started as a Tomb Finance fork. And for those that know what Tomb Finance is, it's essentially a protocol where instead of worrying about selling your token to somebody else at a higher price to profit, which again, that's how 99% of crypto works. Um, you're able to earn through yield, and unfortunately, that yield is pure inflationary, and we have seen how detrimental, uncontrolled inflation can be. And we learned a lot from our original protocol. We never abandoned it and never gave up, and always continued to build. And then here we are today, which is what we'll talk about mostly, is EMP Fusion, which is the new non-Ponzonomic, non-inflationary version of EMP with all the original tokens in the ecosystem as well. So that was a high-level intro,
No, that's
Wealth,
good.
but yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah.
No, that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's I want to say this, and I appreciate having you. One of the reasons I have you here is because I also think that you're very genuine in what you're doing. And the proof is that you're so transparent. I mean, your name is public. People can Google you. I did a long time ago. I mean, you're a real person. You're not, you know, hiding behind a name like Crypto Wealth, for example. Your face is out there, your picture's out there. Uh, they can find who you are, all the things. So I discouraged that a long time ago. I said, hey man, you never know who's going to be in crypto. There's crazy people out there. Maybe you shouldn't be so public because initially you weren't super public, and then you started doing, you started going out there and all these things. And even though I disagreed with that, we've taken a kind of a fork in that way. I appreciate the fact that you are willing, like you're willing to put sort of, you know, I guess you can say your name behind something, so to speak. And I think that's pretty incredible, and it's commendable. It says that you really are genuine about wanting something. Doesn't mean that you couldn't be genuine, obviously, but it is confirmation that you are in fact genuine in what you're wanting to accomplish here and whatnot. I'll also say, just so everybody's watching, speaking of objectivity, I from day one was skeptical of EMP.money, meaning skeptical in could it work the way it was originally set up. And AJ and I had those conversations behind the scenes, and it was like I don't know if that could work. And he in fact thought that it could, and he explained why he saw some of these tomb forks failing and why he thought it could work and the differences he was looking to make. And I will say it worked better than a lot of tomb forks, and it worked effectively longer than a lot of tomb forks. But you guys did essentially lose peg. I mean, for people don't know, this was originally supposed to be pegged at 1 to 1. Was it with Ethereum?
Yeah, absolutely. So the original peg was 4,000 to 1 Ethereum. So, yep, 100%.
So this should have been ideally this would have, when it was on peg, it would have been a 1. Is that right?
Yep, exactly. If Ethereum was $4,000, which around the time we launched in the last bull run it was, and even now we're seeing it get back to those numbers. But yeah, then EMP would be worth $1 simply through liquidity bonding. Again, our main LP is EMP ETH, so if we can maintain the peg, then we do become fractionalized Ethereum just based on the math.
Correct. So now here's the thing. You guys originally, the EMP.money, it ended up losing peg, and you did a lot of things to try to repeg this to 1. Can you explain, if you will, why you feel like you lost peg and what you attempted to do up until the current reiteration, because you guys have started regaining peg because you went way way down, and you have started to regain peg, which I think is noteworthy. I mean, it's strangely inspirational. Like it's kind of crazy. But I want to talk about, before we get into the new EMP fusion, what caused it to fail previously, and what sort of measures did you all as a community, because this is very much a community driven project, as a community, what did you all do to try to get this back on peg?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, man, I love your perspective, and this whole, it's the hero's journey, right? Like we may not have gotten it right the first time, but we have done everything we can to try to, eliminate the pitfalls. And again, we have now with the EMP fusion. But in the beginning, we were one of the most successful tomb forks of all time, and I can't come on here and say that, but everything I want to say is backed up by actual on-chain data, and we were able to maintain peg for about probably I think that the longest was about 55 days straight, which again no other tomb fork had been ever able to do that, and we did it through a few different ways. We um not only were we pegged to a volatile asset like ETH, a lot of other tomb forks tried to peg to a dollar, and once you lose that peg, it's everybody does what's called a run on the bank where they sell and leave because there is no upside potential to a dollar. So that was the first kind of difference. We pay to ETH, being a volatile asset. If it goes up, you still get the price appreciation of ETH. And even if we lose peg and Ethereum is going up, then you still get more dollar value out of it. And then another major thing was our education. So we were one of the first DeFi protocols 2.5 years ago to create a full online academy about the protocol. And, knowledge is power. And we were hoping, and it worked very well, all things considered, to educate the community on the best way to play the game, so to speak, as a whole, which again will make all of us more successful in the long run. Now, again, human nature takes over. No matter how amazing you can teach somebody or create an educational infrastructure around what you're doing, people will be emotional, and that is again nothing that we will ever be able to fix in crypto. But and we'll get into this a little bit later too, Wealth. But uh, the prisoner's dilemma. I know that you talk about that a lot, and that unfortunately, no matter what we did, we could not solve that prisoner's dilemma. You probably do a much better job of explaining that than I could. But and then on top of all of what I just mentioned, we also had a few secondary smart contracts, which we call the legacy contracts now. And those were again additional gamified smart contracts that actually gave a utility outside of the Tomb fork to EMP and eShare, which are our two tokens. And so all of those things combined, we did maintain longer than any other Tomb fork. And, but unfortunately, with the prisoner's dilemma, the bear market going, I mean, again, we launched right at the beginning of a bear market. So even if we would have had, solid economics, it would have been a struggle to begin with. But that on top of the bear market, on top of the uncontrolled inflation of EMP, all of that essentially led to EMP, losing peg and then going down. And so at one point we were 99% below peg. And so right now, as you can see, obviously there's been some swing trading in the last few days, but ever since we really announced the date that Fusion was going live, we made the hard decision to not spend our treasury during the bear market. I think a lot of our community was a little upset about that because they wanted us to do buybacks and provide exit liquidity. And we said no, because if we do that, then it's game over, and there is no recovering at that point. So we utilized our treasury to produce yield, knowing that we were going to have a pivot into EMP Fusion. And I mean, if you look at the chart, again, over the last month, it's been a steady climb up and to the right. So that kind of brings us to today. But yeah, does that give you a good picture? Well,
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a link here where I can easily click on the chart somewhere, or do I have to pull it up?
yeah, if you click at the top right, I think it pulls it up. The logo, the EMP logo.
Oh, right here?
It may pull it up. Yeah,
Right
yeah.
here?
If not, or no, the actual token where it has the numbers on
Yeah,
the
there you
top
go.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, just I figured it's good to see that because it is pretty impressive what you've been able to do. I mean, I'll say this. Obviously people are taking gains and whatnot, but just even the I mean, when you were all the way down here, I mean, even down here, I mean, this is nuts. Like you said, 95% off basically.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
listen, this is impressive just to even have this kind of run. I want to kind of explain to people watching because, and listen, I did always think you were going to lose peg, and you understood that it was a headwind to maintain peg. But you had a game plan going into this, and it was an admirable game plan. And the game plan, the way I see it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there was three components to maintain that peg. First of all, you were using a volatile asset like Ethereum. Part of the reason behind using a volatile asset, if you're a little bit off peg, nobody's shocked per se because the assets are going up and down itself. unlike a dollar, which should always stay steady at a dollar. B, you're kind of sort of able to ride in a bear market, ride up the momentum of the underlying asset because the early adopters of the community expect it to ride up. So in a not in a bear market, in a bull market, that would have worked in your favor really well. Most likely, you would have probably held peg a bit longer. That would have been the hope and the idea. So number one, you tried to peg to a volatile asset. Number two, you really built a community of, I believe you were calling them benevolent whales, essentially, of founders. And the idea was you had six or seven, you know, essential founders or early investors, and you'd all basically committed that you weren't going to sell for an extended period of time. And the idea was to create stability of the price with the early group. And number three was community education. And I've praised you guys' community education before, and I've went through the community education myself. It's really good. I mean, there's a couple of guys out there in the DeFi space right now teaching providing liquidity, and I feel like they could all benefit by seeing what you guys did because it was cleaner, sleeker, easier to follow, more straightforward. Complex principles were broken down very, very simple, and the idea was to teach people how to use the protocol because all of these protocols will work if the community understands how to use them properly, and they will maintain the peg ideally and definitely using something called the prisoner's dilemma. So you had the ETH volatility, pegging to a volatile asset, you had the benevolent whales, and massive community or education designed to help maintain peg. And I want to explain to people, because you brought up the phrase prisoner's dilemma, just what that means essentially. If AJ and I were accused of a crime and the prosecutors or whatever, the law enforcement had no real evidence, but they were trying to turn one of us against the other one. And we both said ahead of time, I'm not gonna rat on you as long as you don't rat on me, and we'll both be able to get off of, out of trouble. Prisoner's dilemma is when all of a sudden AJ and I get separated in an interrogation and they tell me, hey, listen, we've offered your buddy full immunity if he will be a witness against you, but we'll give you full immunity if you commit to being a witness against him first. We both know we can both get out of this thing unscathed if we just keep our mouths shut. But the short term guarantee of the payoff can cause us to sacrifice the other one. That's called the prisoner's dilemma. And that's essentially what happens with tomb forks is the community stops using it in a healthy way and they rush to the door for the quick gains. And that destroys the protocol for everyone. Um, is that essentially what happened with EMP? AJ, am I saying that properly?
Yeah, brother, I love it. That was a great explanation. And yeah, I mean, the bottom line is we're all programmed in crypto to want to get rich quick, and that mentality again becomes very detrimental because as long as we as a community all had, a long-term vision and that delayed gratification, then those sort of protocols can absolutely sustain. I mean, again, as an example, and not to get too political here, but the U.S. dollar is very reminiscent of that tomb fork model. Again, that inflation based on being above or below a mint rate. So and again, you could argue that the U.S. dollar is the longest running inflationary protocol of all time. So it can work, but for all the reasons you mentioned, again, we saw it not work. And
Okay.
rather than giving up and saying, "Oh well," we pivoted and put together, a plan that would be much more sustainable in the future.
First of all, I want to tell you, good job on not using the treasury right away as a community. I know it's probably a community decision as a whole, meaning the wells within the community, because
For sure.
that's nothing but exit liquidity. You know that. I know that. That's just a race to the bottom at that point. And people don't know that, by the way. I genuinely think there are plenty of crypto investors. I'm in all these protocols and in telegrams, and people always complain about two things. A, human nature, other people selling. That's always going to happen. And then they complain about devs, co-founders, or protocols won't use available liquidity to do buybacks. Well, then at that point, everybody's going to sell at that point, and that's a problem. So good job there, and good job to focus on earning some yield. Now, let's talk about, it's called Fusion, right? That you are working on now, EMP Fusion.
Yep, 100%. And also, I just realized I don't see your screen. If you are trying to screen record, I'm happy to go over it, but I can't see it if we
Oh, gotcha.
get into this.
Let me
Yeah.
let me pull it up
So,
for you. I am screen recording, but let me pull that up for you. Um, all right, there you go. Can you see it here?
yep, perfect. All right, awesome. That'll help me walk you through it all. So, yeah, I mean, again, I think we laid a great foundation of where we were, and now we're going to talk about where we are now and where we are going. So, the really cool part, and again, you may want to refresh. It'll have the Fusion. Are you on EMP.money or are you on the other site? We have a backup site as well. It looks like you might be on the legacy site. But yeah.
EMP
If
dot
yeah,
money.
yeah, try that. Um, no, same deal. Okay, maybe the dev might be pushing an update. So, anyway, the whole idea is that we're moving away from the inflation altogether. So now EMP actually has been non-inflationary for a while, ever since we lost peg. Um, it doesn't print anymore, EMP. However, with community sentiment, there really was no catalyst for peg recovery, and you could still always earn in the farm, but the APR again comparatively was very low compared to other more degenerate plays. So if you go to farm, that was how you were able to earn in the protocol originally. You would provide EMP ETH LP, you would then get a portion of eShare emissions, which is our other token that we'll talk about. And eShare is still inflationary, but we are on a halvening model like Bitcoin, where it reduces the emissions every year, and we'll talk more about making eShare deflationary as well. But as you can see, the APR was still about 28%, which in terms of traditional finance, is pretty damn amazing. But we are in crypto, and we also want to honor the original mission statement of EMP, which was a passive income platform with exposure to Ethereum. And again, we have also had this really major transition from inflationary yield, or what I like to call fake yield, into real yield. And so not only have we built EMP and EMP Fusion, but we have been building for literally the last 2 years, launching other protocols. And again, this was a hard decision because, people think, well, why aren't you focusing on building EMP? Instead, you're building these other protocols. But we did that on purpose to drive real revenue back to EMP Fusion. So, again, the hard decision was to maybe not do what the community understood, because we're playing, chess and not checkers, to build these revenue streams. Again, SparkSwap and Manta Network Swap are examples. Those are actual exchanges that we have built, and a percentage of those exchanges, the volume and the fees that they generate, gives us real yield into EMP Fusion. So, moving forward, and I know that you say this a lot, Wealth, and the smart money understands this. It's really about investing in teams, not necessarily projects. And so EMP Fusion, you're essentially investing in us as a team and getting exposure to all the things that we build in the future to again drive revenue back home. And this concept is really rare in the DeFi space. I mean, I think finally people are starting to get it, but you can't rely on Posonomics. You can't rely on new users. You have to build actual revenue through product market fit that again makes things sustainable long term. So yeah, I'm happy to hear your
Yeah,
take on
no, I,
that.
I
But
mean, I think you're exactly right. But let's talk about EMP Fusion. What are you guys trying to actually do here?
EMP fusion again. What happens is, and this is another reason why we are seeing the peg recovery. So we are honoring the value of EMP at peg, and so EMP fusion is essentially a real yield passive income staking platform. So we use the word sacrifice for potential regulatory reasons, but you're essentially sacrificing your EMP into EMP fusion because there's only a certain amount of EMP in existence. There is a supply cap on your ownership within Fusion. So by sacrificing your EMP, you then get what's called a microgrid. And again, everything is electricity themed. So the microgrid represents your ownership within the protocol. And so again, to put that in perspective, say the protocol is able to earn, $1,000 a day from all the real yield, the other exchanges. We use our treasury to do concentrated liquidity mining, um, farming. All of that is real revenue coming in. So if there are 1,000 people with the same amount of ownership, then that means each person, if you owned 1%, then you would earn $10 a day. So the real revenue is split between everybody within Fusion based on their ownership. And why we're able to give this what we call peg bonus right now is because not only are we mathematically favored to regain peg, but that unrealized gain will actually be realized gains when we are at peg because you can sell your microgrid to another user in the peer-to-peer marketplace. And, there's this arbitrage opportunity where when we're below peg, you are financially incentivized to buy EMP off the market and sacrifice that because you're getting a larger ownership that way. And as we get back to peg, then you're much better off trying to find, a better deal on the peer-to-peer marketplace. Um, to gain ownership. So the whole idea again over time is that we are able to not only regain peg but then maintain peg. That eventually all the EMP in existence will be sacrificed in to fusion, and then at that point sacrifice goes away, and the only way to participate is buying a microgrid from somebody else, which again would be at market value of a dollar per EMP, or at that point, because we're maintaining peg, uh, if ETH goes to 8,000, then each EMP would be worth $2. So again, it's really a unique mechanism that again we have never seen done before. It's not a fork. This is our own kind of economic system that we've come up with. So
Okay.
I know that was a lot of info, but
All
does
right.
that make sense?
Yeah,
Well,
I got a question. So the idea to return EMP back to PEG and to shift the entire protocol. So we're moving completely away from a tomb fork. The idea is people are going to be able to, which by the way, I got to say, if I understand this right, it's a very interesting idea. People are able to own a percentage of a decentralized protocol that is earning real yield, um, and they basically can have an ownership interest of that ongoing yield by
correct.
purchasing, or in this case, sacrifice using EMP to sacrifice to get some sort of microgrids or whatever.
Yep, 100%. That is again the most simple breakdown in terms of again how to get involved.
Okay.
And yeah, again, to be clear, everything I'm saying is done through smart contracts. We're not managing anybody's funds. All of this is pre-programmed in and all on chain. I mean, we've launched literally hundreds of smart contracts and although I'm not a developer, we have the best in the business. And literally, not one of our smart contracts have ever been exploited in 2.5 years.
Right.
So
So let me just couple of questions. So you
for
said
sure.
they sacrifice EMP to get their version of a microgrid. Is that what these are?
Yep. So your screen, I can't see it again, but yeah, the microgrid
Why
is
can't you see it? Why
represented.
can't you see
Yeah.
it? That's so weird. Okay, that's okay. So I'm looking at I'm on the market page where you can purchase energy. There's low voltage power packs. Oh, I see batteries, microgrids. There's none listed, but you can get batteries or something.
Yeah, so the way the smart contract works, you have to actually at least sacrifice something to be able to see your microgrid and your dashboard. So again, I mean, as little as $10 worth of EMP just so that you can, get started. We always suggest learning before you really go hard. And never ever invest more than you can afford. There we go. Now I can see. So yeah, if you go again to the sacrifice page, it will show up. But yeah, the marketplace, and we'll talk about this as well because and you can kind of see it's blurred out, but that little dial right there on the homepage, yep, go down a little bit. There's like yep, down a little bit more. Um, right there. So there's like a little half circle in white that's blurred out.
Right.
That will show your ownership. So again, it is an NFT. It's all on chain, and depending on how much you sacrifice, that will show your percentage ownership of the protocol. But yeah, does that make sense? Sorry, I don't
Yes,
know where
but
we were going.
I have a
Yeah.
couple of questions. So, if the protocol loses money, because if you're in DeFi, there's always exploits, things happen, even if nothing happens to your contracts. Let's just say you're investing in, I don't know, lending on Aave and Aave gets exploited. How does that affect the microgrid holders at that point? Meaning, they don't lose anything per se, but at what point do they earn? Does the protocol have some sort of high watermark? Like at this point, we distribute the funds. How does that work? How does the protocol grow as opposed to people just constantly withdrawing, withdrawing, withdrawing?
For sure. So this is the amazing part. We again, the key is real yield. So again, to back up a little bit, we have 8 revenue streams. So the two main revenue streams are from these other dexes. Again, Cedo Swap and Spark Swap. If we're doing say 100,000, or right now it's more like 400,000, but say $400,000 a day in volume, roughly, let's just again, and these aren't the actual numbers, but just for demonstration purposes, say we're the percentage that we bring home from that DEX back into Fusion is $200 a day. Well, that again is one particular revenue stream. So if that DEX goes away or is no longer being used for whatever reason, we still have 7 other revenue streams that can pick up the slack. And because there is no um payout in the ecosystem, that it's all based on real yield, then yeah, some days the APR might be lower and some days the APR might be way higher, just based on the volume. And it's really actually bullish because obviously we all know that in the bear market, volume is down. Arguably, we're entering into the bull cycle now, but we really don't see the top of the bull cycle until October, November, about 300 days or more past the halving. And so that means that the volume would potentially increase and then more rewards enter the ecosystem. So does that answer? Well,
It
and
does
again,
answer.
we have a breakdown of all 8 that we have. I mean, another example is, our treasury is in concentrated liquidity farms, a lot of blue chip, but also, more speculative assets. So we are well diversified so that not one of our revenue streams accounts for more than 10% of the revenue coming in.
Okay. So earlier you said that the sacrifice phase is in EMP, but can we use this as well or no?
Yeah, totally. So again, right now, and this is the alpha for your community and what we've been telling people that are paying attention. While we are below peg, you absolutely want to be sacrificing EMP related assets. So EMP, EMP ETH LP that you may have had from earlier in the day. And if you scroll all the way down, well, up EMP is another one, and E-bond. So I want to talk about E-bond real quick. You know, in the original Tomb Fork, bondholders were really doing amazing service to the protocol. However, when those protocols fail, the people that were doing the most good for the protocol get screwed the hardest because you're only able to redeem bonds when you're above peg. Well, we are giving credit to every bondholder by sacrificing their bonds into the system. And again, we're able to do that because that EMP is already accounted for in our treasury. So yeah, that was just another really cool example of trying to honor everything that we set out to do. So to recap, if we're below peg, again at today's numbers, it's about 81 cents would be at peg. So as long as EMP is under 81 cents, you sacrifice EMP, you get the full peg bonus. And then when we are closer to peg, then you would want to be sacrificing ETH or BUSD or USDC or any of the other stables. Yeah,
So let me, how is it when you say, clarify this for me, because we're purchasing these microgrids, right? When you come in here and you
for sure.
sacrifice, uh, how is it that you can, how do you account? Because how do you account for EMP being on peg if it's not actually on peg? Can you kind of explain sort of the math or the idea or the concept behind that?
For sure.
Like
So
let me clarify what I'm saying. How do I
yeah,
know that I'm getting full peg value theoretically on my EMP even though we're not at peg?
yeah, so the cool part is the UI will automatically show it to you. So when you do sacrifice your EMP, again, for example purposes, we're about a 4x away from peg at the moment. So if you bought $100 worth of EMP fresh off the market right now and sacrifice that, your microgrid value would actually show as $400 because again, the microgrid value is calculated in what we call sacrifice points. And sacrifice points are dependent on how much EMP is in existence and how far or above peg we are. So you're getting more sacrifice points because we're below peg. But the reason that there's two reasons that this matters. Number one, as we get closer to peg, that bonus goes away. So again, if EMP was at 50 cents, then you would only be getting less than a 2x bonus on your sacrificing. So this inherently drives the value and arbitrage of getting us back to peg. And then number two, obviously we're giving you, a unrealized value of your microgrid, but that money is actually able to be realized at that higher value because once we are at peg, then users are able to sell their microgrid at that market value, which is 4x from today. So you do have to wait a little bit, but you can absolutely realize those gains because again, any new users, they're much better off buying a microgrid than sacrificing EMP at that point. So does that make sense?
It does make sense. So is a microgrid like an NFT?
It is 100% an NFT. Yep, and it represents again the overall EMP in the protocol. So again, just to give some bullish numbers, and the math works this way. From a coding perspective, it's a little bit more complicated, but your microgrid is essentially representing the encapsulated EMP that you have sacrificed. So that's why I said earlier there is a situation where you are not getting diluted on your ownership of the microgrids because there's only so much EMP that is out there. So you are getting a true fair value of ownership within the ecosystem. And yeah, that NFT can be sold all together or portions of the NFT or microgrid can be sold as well, and that's in the marketplace. You're able to sell, one sacrifice point at a time. So it's really customizable.
So what prevents someone from taking their EMP to someplace like OpenSea?
Yeah, so number one, the NFTs are all programmed to only be in our ecosystem. So you're not even able to go to OpenSea. They're all programmed to only be tradable in the ecosystem. But number two, it has to be that way because if you tried to move your NFT somewhere else, then you wouldn't be getting any of the yield while you're doing that. And even when you put it on the marketplace, you are sacrificing the yield that while it's listed. So and it's good for us too because we're getting a marketplace fee as well. So we get 3% on all the marketplace transactions. And rather than going to our pocket, that goes to feed the yield in EMP Fusion. So, that's another reason that Fusion in and of itself is a revenue stream as well.
Okay, okay, AJ, I gotta object a little bit here.
All right, I
So
want to hear it, man. Yeah,
so
talk to me.
here's the challenge. By the way, mechanically, I agree with everything you're saying. It sounds fascinating. It sounds interesting. The idea is basically everybody's becoming almost like bondholders. Essentially, is what's happening. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's like when you're buying these microgrids, you're basically becoming a version of what a bondholder was previously in a tomb fork in a way, except you're earning ongoing yield even below peg. But you're essential to you're making a capital sacrifice. You're earning a some sort of APY on that in real yield, which is super cool. Um, and but you're essentially frozen. It's an investment you can't sell. It's not very liquid until we're back on peg. But the idea being is that it eventually ends up on peg, and it's theoretically, it has no choice but to eventually get on peg as long as people buy into the microgrid concept. Um,
Yeah, so I would agree with that except for one thing.
yep.
You are still liquid. So again, obviously there has to be a buyer, so it's not as liquid as a liquidity pool. However, we're seeing a lot of volume even on the secondary market now because even if people list their EMP or their microgrid at, like say, a cent below the actual sacrifice point value, people are buying them because it's a better deal that way.
Makes
So
sense. Yep.
it still does drive volume. And again, in my example earlier, when sacrifice goes away, I mean there would be a point in time where there is very little EMP left on the market or in wallets or anywhere, and then sacrifice would completely disappear, and the only way to get in would be buying on the secondary market. And if the yields are that good, which again, even now, we're looking at a base APR, not including your value at peg. But we're already looking at like a 50% APR in terms of yield. So as we get back to peg, as we grow our revenue streams, I mean, you could be seeing upwards of 100% APR in terms of yield and having a price appreciating asset of a microgrid because we are still liquidity bonded with ETH.
What
So
is your
yeah,
current APR or APY? You said what is it currently?
yes. So if you again, I mean, it's only been 8 days or 10 days, so you know how hard it is to calculate
Yes.
APR in that amount of time. But just based on daily returns, and again, they do fluctuate. Some days will be more, some days will be less because it's dependent on the real yield. But even now, we're looking at about 40 to 50% APR. Even today. So that is bullish considering we're below peg, E-share values are down, we're just ramping up and getting started. And as we do get back to peg and, we see a bull market, all the above, we add more revenue streams, then that will also, again, make the APR attractive for new users. And one more thing too, I know you probably have more questions, but on that note, we as a protocol will also be going in and buying undervalued microgrids because that acts almost as a stock buyback within the ecosystem. And so even if the rewards stayed the same, because we're buying microgrids off the market and essentially reducing the amount of people that we have to reward those rewards to, that will automatically make the APR go up over time because you're getting a larger portion of that pie.
Uh,
Does that make sense?
yes.
Yeah,
So let me ask you this. You said that this is where I want to push back on you actually. So you said that we
for
have to
sure.
do this on the market. We have to have this internal market. You can only use these NFTs inside our ecosystem, which is interesting, by the way. But we have to do it on the market because of the earning potential or the earnings of it. If you try to put it on a another marketplace like OpenSea, it could cause some conflict there. Is that because are the earnings automatically distributed to my wallet, or do I have to somehow click some buttons on a smart contract to unstake those earnings? How does that work if I own a
Yeah,
microcredit?
absolutely. So again, this is going to be a little bit overwhelming, maybe, but I think it's important that we go into actually how it functions. So um, everything is still settled in eShare, and that's why eShare is potentially, going to have a lot of upside potential as well. Not financial advice, but how the smart contract works is everything is settled in energy, and energy is the e-liquid version of eShare. So energy and eShare are tied one to one. Uh, and so what happens is when you're earning these rewards, we have to go and buy eShare first with all the real yield in order to reward that as energy in the ecosystem. And so there are two ways to earn on the protocol. Number one is what's called a BBE, or a buyback and earn. That doesn't require any new capital. That is essentially the auto compounder, where it will take your energy rewards, or in this case, eShare. It will sell the eShare, and it will buy EMP off the market and sacrifice it for you with the peg bonus. So the BBE is really powerful, especially when we're below peg, because it provides buying pressure to EMP, helping us get back to peg. And it gives you a lot larger ownership in the protocol without any additional capital. And the reason this is, again, different is there is eventually so much EMP in existence. So you're not auto compounding to infinity. At some point when there's no more EMP, then the BBE goes away. And so the other way to earn is through what we call batteries. And batteries are really cool because they do cost. So you have to, they cost $15 to buy a battery. Again, that $15 goes to the protocol as rewards, not to the devs. Again, furthering the real yield. But the battery will reward you in actual BNB, or actual ETH, or actual USDT. Those are the three batteries for the initial launch, but we'll be adding other batteries as well, even partner batteries, which is another onboarding tool for us, because who wouldn't want constant buying pressure on their tokens? But it sells the eShare to buy BNB or ETH or USDT. And because we're using all the revenue to buy eShare before we distribute all those rewards, we are still over time having a net positive effect on the price of eShare as we buy it first. So those are the two ways to cash out. And yeah, you once you hit a $15 minimum threshold on the battery, you just press cash out, and it will put BNB right into your wallet.
Very, very interesting. Fascinating, actually. Um, you know, I gotta continue to watch this. I mean, here's the no-brainer non-tech thing. I mean, if someone wants to, and this is where I'm like, man, this is kind of tempting. I mean, if somebody even wants to remotely speculate on the success of EMP, it sounds like the easiest thing on the planet is just to go buy some EMP off the market. Um,
Yeah, brother, totally.
and
Yeah, well, yeah, and
theoretically,
we
we may have a 4x on that, at least a 3x. And then the other option is just go buy eShare. Um, I mean, if you just wanted the non-tech version of trying to benefit from overall price appreciation, you're not getting the APY obviously, but it's very interesting. I mean, you guys have put a lot of thought into this, and at the end of the day, the success and failure is going to simply be upon, does the community value it, and can you produce APY that are competitive, in an APY or APR that is at the very least competitive what else you can get in DeFi for similar risk. Um,
for sure, brother.
and if you can
Yeah.
do that, and the community buys into the idea, I mean, I don't mean to, pun intended, but if they buy into the idea and you are in fact able to do that, it's very fascinating. Now, I don't know how much of this is fully decentralized, but if and this is the part that I think a lot of people are missing in the crypto space on various protocols. Whenever we can get these things to where they are fully decentralized, it starts to get really freaking interesting, where no government, no entity, no nobody could stop your earnings. It's fascinating to me to think about that someone could buy a microgrid theoretically, and if it was 100% decentralized, and if it's not today, who knows? Maybe it will be one day in the future. The idea that under no circumstances could someone stop that income stream, whether it's 10% a year or 50% a year. It's fascinating. It's very interesting. Um,
I love it. Yeah, well, I mean, and again, that is the same mindset that you and I share and the passion for true decentralized finance. And again, everybody says, they're doing things in a decentralized way, or, there's a lot of buzzwords that people use, but we're actually doing it. And so, yeah, man. And to your point, we will, yes, right now there are a few functions, that still require, other calls, so to speak on initiating it. But over time, this will be 100% decentralized, where no matter what, if everybody, all the team founders and all the devs, died tomorrow, it would be able to live on its own forever, and that is really cool because we have the infrastructure set up. For it to operate that way. And, that was another reason why we had to build these other protocols first and then build EMP Fusion because it wouldn't have worked the other way around. And one thing too, I just want to talk about. You said um, buying EMP and speculating on us going out to pay. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We don't control anybody's actions, and there are plenty of swing traders. And we even saw it in the chart. If you look at the chart about 2 days ago, we saw a big dump, and that was somebody that was speculating on the price going up. Obviously, they didn't hold long enough. But the point is that even with these swing traders, it is a game of attrition where even though they dump, they would theoretically never be able to buy EMP back at a cheaper price than what they sold it for. And we're seeing that play out already, that over time, because of the essentially the buying and burning of EMP, um, that will hold true. And so we have different phases. Right now, 100% of the economic energy is in recovering PEG. But once we recover PEG, we will have mechanisms in place to maintain PEG. And the more EMP that's bought and sacrificed, that means much less selling pressure on PEG over time. So does that make sense? Well,
yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, listen, I think there's we could go ahead and debate why this could or could not work.
for sure,
I
brother.
admire
Yeah,
I admire the innovation. I admire the attempt. I admire the I don't know where fusion just went. Oh, there it is. I admire what you guys are trying to do as a community overall. And I mean, listen, there's a here's the bottom line, AJ. You and I both have watched plenty of developers who were the flavor of the month. And when I say developers, I use that term very loosely. People who were promoting protocols as their own. In some cases, it wasn't their own, but they were promoting it as if it was, meaning they were promoting as if they were the developer and they weren't. But
for sure.
there's plenty of those people that protocols made a lot of money for a while, did good, and then they crash and burn, and then developers disappear. They're in Telegram groups every day. They're on Discord every day. They're on Twitter Spaces every day, and then suddenly they go dark and nobody knows where they're at or anything. You have stuck this through. You have been focused on this. You have married this concept literally in a lot of ways, and you haven't given up on it. And I think the community should be very thankful for that, especially if they're sitting at a loss right now. I mean, listen, I think if it works the way you're talking about, the way we've discussed it here, I mean, I think there's a, a better than 0% chance that this thing goes back to peg for sure. And I think that, it's a very interesting speculative play. Look, I'll be paying attention to it. I mean, don't think I haven't been sitting here thinking, it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe drop $1,000 on that or $5,000 on that and just hold it until you get to peg or very, very close to peg. Um, listen, people are speculating on a lot of altcoins right now, hoping for a 3 or 4x, and it's never
Totally.
going to happen, and they have no idea. They're out there buying the next meme coin, and this is me giving some kudos to you guys. They're buying the next meme coin, wanting it to 3x, where they can get their first sell and get their money out, or 5x or 10x. And there's no rhyme or reason for why it will go up. It's just a sheer gamble. At least in this case, your community members, at the very least, there's some fundamentals at play that should create, in theory at least, some positive buying pressure going forward. And that says a lot about you all as an organization, a group, and a community. And look, I wish you all the best. I'm going to keep paying attention. I appreciate you being here. And I mean, you wrap it up. I'll let you have the last word.
Yeah, no doubt, Wells. Well, again, man, I know we can always have an intelligent conversation with each other, and we truly feel like we've had a ton of PhD mathematicians and developers, and we've run through all the simulations, all the economic models. Again, could it get back to peg? We absolutely think so. And so again, that is just the conviction that we have. But knowing what we know and what we're building, I mean, even if it is a long game of recovering peg and maintaining peg, the real yield is what will outweigh anything because over time that real yield will chip away at not only the APRs but also the ownership of the protocol and the amount of EMP there is. So that I think if we had to boil it down to one thing that makes us different and is the best measure of future success, that is the real revenue, and we're only scaling the revenue as well. We just announced that we're going to be moving all of our dexes under one giant multi-chain dex, which again will help us kind of consolidate our efforts and the economic energy and get more users. I mean, even now, we're between all of our exchanges, we're already doing about $1 million a day in volume. So when we hit the bull run, that could easily 10x, which would again 10x the real revenue coming in. So
Absolutely.
yeah, man, I appreciate all your again your friendship and your words of wisdom. Whether I listen to them or not is a different story, right? But
Absolutely.
no, I love it, brother.
Listen,
So yeah, you've been a great asset to me and along the crypto journey
well,
for sure, bro.
I gotta say this. I love this version and its chances of success way better than the original Tomb Fork. I love this
Right
version
on.
way, way better. So, congratulations to you guys. Awesome job. Thank you so much for being here. Take care.
All right, brother. You got it. Cheers.
Bye bye.